My name is Jennifer Gaines. I'm one of the advocates at Breaking Free, and I'm also a survivor of prostitution. And I'm here today to tell you a little bit about my story, how prostitution impacted my life, my children's lives, and how it also impacts your lives. I come from a middle-class family. I had a very nice childhood. My mother was this devoted Catholic. She was a very good mom. She did everything right. She had a lot of rules, a lot of structure. She encouraged us to use our creativity. We weren't allowed to do a lot of the things that other kids were allowed to do. And sometimes extended family members often teased and made fun of my mom in front of us. And by the time at about age 12, I started buying into some of those negative messages about my mom, and I started resenting some of her parenting techniques. But things went really bad when my parents came to me and told me that they were getting a divorce. I took that really, really, really hard. I loved my dad. My dad was a lot of fun. I can remember my dad coming in the room and lifting me up in the air, tickling me and playing with me for hours. He was kind of like our escape from all my mom's rules and structure. So when my dad came home, it was fun. And he made me feel like the most important person in the world whenever he entered the room. Everybody liked my dad. So it was hard on the whole family when they got divorced. And I started hating my mother for it. I blamed her because I didn't know that he was using drugs, and I didn't know that he was cheating on my mom. She kept all that from me. She kept it from all of us kids. She only told us good things about our dad, and I don't know how she did that. I know there's been times where I've been mad at my boyfriends, and I couldn't wait to blurt out negative things about him in front of my children. So I don't know how she did that, but she did. And at age 12, I just became impossible for her to control. I blamed her, I yelled at her, I was defiant, rebellious, and even physical towards my mom. I remember at one point I threw a pot of boiling hot coffee on my mother. I hated her. I felt like she drove my dad away, and I hated her for that. At one point, my mom, she tried so many things. She tried medication. She put me in different programs, different group homes, treatment centers, hospitals, crisis units. At one point, she gave up, and she said, "You know what? Go live with your dad." And so I did. And that's when I started seeing different things about my dad. I noticed that he liked promiscuous women. Those are the women he paid attention to when we were out and about. One time I was going through his things, and I discovered he had another child from another woman, and he had all these secrets, and in his bottom drawer he had pornography. And I got this direct message. Okay, so this is the kind of girls that don't get left. This is the kind of girl you need to be if you want to keep your man in your life. I remember being in his car and seeing stripper costumes and the inconsistency of him not coming home. I couldn't maintain in school, so I think my mother, that's when she was like, "I changed my mind and you need to come back home." But it was a trick. What she was really going to do was bring me to another juvenile program. She didn't know what to do with me. And when I figured out that it was a setup, that's when I looked at her right before I ran away, and I told her that I hate you I'm going to spend the rest of my life hurting you. And I ran away. I ran away to Hennepin Avenue. Back then it was called Blackie. You know, children don't run away. When we run away, we don't run away to somewhere safe. We go to the streets. And I ran away to an arcade. I was hanging out there with a girlfriend of mine. I'll never forget the day, well, actually the night that I met my trafficker. I remember when he came in the room. I was in the arcade. I was standing by the jukebox, and I could tell that he was extremely popular because everybody paid attention to him. Everybody liked him. Everybody was shaking his hand. He was dressed really good. He, just like my dad, he took over the whole room with his presence. And out of everybody in there, out of all the girls to talk to, he picked me to talk to. I couldn't believe it. And
Tell us how old you were.
I was 14 years old. I was totally flattered. And I believed him when he told me that I was pretty. And I needed that attention. I needed it really bad. I don't know what it is. Little girls need their daddies. They really do. And I remember him taking me out to bars. I'm feeling all grown up. I don't have to listen to what my mother says anymore. I remember him telling me that my parents don't understand me, but he did. That my age was just a number, that I wasn't really 14. I wasn't your average 14-year-old. That was just my age. My mind was something of a 24-year-old, and he could appreciate that. They couldn't. So there's 3 stages in prostitution that we talk about at Breaking Free. We talk about it a lot with the women in our groups. It's that recruitment stage, the initiation stage, and the enslavement stage. And recruitment looks different for a lot of different women. But for me, it lasted a long time. There was a long grooming period. And during this grooming period, my trafficker was doing things like we would drive down Lake Street. We didn't have internet prostitution at the time. There was a lot of street prostitution. We would drive down Lake Street, and he would point out the working girls standing on the corner. And I remember him asking, you know, so what do you think about that? Would you ever be willing to do that? And I remember saying to myself, no, that's scary. I would never want to do that. And I remember him thinking, well, or he said, I actually respect those women. I respect them because I think it takes a strong woman to do what they got to do. And they're out there, they're taking care of their family, they're taking care of their man. And the average woman isn't able to do that. It takes a strong woman to be able to do that. And that's what I'm looking for in my life. I'm looking for a strong woman. And I'm hoping that woman is you. And I remember thinking, oh my God, what if I can't meet his standards? What if he leaves me like my dad did? And I got all this fear and panic. But he knew what he was doing with me. He knew when to put the pressure on, when to take it off. He saw that I was freaking out a little bit, so he changed the subject. During this recruitment process, we went to parties. There was after-hour parties at that time, and traffickers would come in and make a big deal about their women, handing over all their money to them. And then I remember getting pressure from these other women. And I remember them coming up to me and saying things like, oh, so how old are you? You're 14? Oh, and you ain't out here getting no money yet? What's wrong with you? You don't want to hang out with the big girls? You don't want to wear shoes like us? You better get his man his money, girl. You're going to lose him. I mean, I just remember all this pressure I used to get, and seeing them in their beautiful clothing, and some of them had cars, and I just couldn't do it. So I think that my trafficker, maybe he was even getting pressure from some of his other pimp friends. I don't know. But it was time to move me into that initiation stage. And that's when He came to me with this very animated story. He told me that he was in some real trouble. He told me that these gang members were after him and they were going to kill him if he didn't have their money by 9 o'clock that night. I was really afraid, and I believed him. I believed it was real. That was back in the time where we had a lot of gang activity in Minnesota, a lot of gang violence. It was all over the news. I said, well, I don't know. What do you want me to do? How can I help? And he said, listen, I actually already have a plan. I already got the money that I need. I got it in my pocket right now. Here's what I'm going to need you to do. I'm going to need you to go upstairs. I got some friends up there. You know them. You've seen them before. And I want you to go be with them like you are when you're with me. He sold me on the idea when he told me that he was like, listen, I will be in the very next room. And if anything goes wrong or if it gets too serious, just call my name. I'll come in there and I'll shut down the whole thing. So I agreed. That was comforting to me, and I felt a little better about it, so I agreed to do it. And I'll spare you all the details of what happened in there. But what I will tell you is this. It was a horrible, extremely violent experience. It was meant, and it succeeded in breaking down whatever sense of self-worth that I thought that I had. It was gone. I remember screaming his name over and over and over. He didn't come in and he didn't stop it. But what he did do, when it was all over, and I'll never forget this, is literally picking me up, spinning me around, kissing me all over, and telling me he loves me, just like my dad did. And don't judge me, but for some reason I needed that. I needed it really bad. I needed his love. You know, later on, as the night went on, I started asking questions, and I remember saying, well, aren't we gonna go pay the gangbangers? Don't you owe them some money? And I remember him saying things to me like, don't ask me no questions, stay in your place. I'm a man, I know what I'm doing. I'll let you know when to speak. But I started getting angry and thinking, wait a minute, did he trick me? Was this a setup? Was this for real? So I asked another question, and that's the first time he hit me, and he hit me so hard that I saw stars, and I learned really quick not to speak unless I was spoken to, not to get in his business, not to interfere, and to stay in my place. And it didn't take long after that for him to move me out onto the street and into prostitution. I was 14 then, and I was trafficked to lots of different states in America, but mostly from Chicago to New York. I spent 28 years involved in prostitution. Prostitution has impacted my life in so many ways. Most of all, it's impacted my children. I have 4 children by 4 different traffickers. Each time I was able to get away from one trafficker, it wasn't long before I was snatched up and recruited by another trafficker. Because what happens out there is you start thinking that the only person that will love you is a pimp. You believe everything that my trafficker told me over and over and over. This is what you're good at. This is what you do well. I'm going to teach you how to take them suckers for everything that they got. He taught me things like how to pick pockets, how to talk guys out of more money, how to manipulate men, how to lie to the police. He taught me all these things. And this is where all my self-worth came, was from how much money I made. First, I want to tell you about my oldest son, David. David was my son David was extremely intelligent, and our relationship got pretty rough. One day he came home early from school. It was a half day that day, and I didn't realize it. I was doing in-calls out of my home at the time. I couldn't do out-calls anymore because I had 5 DWIs on my record. So I was confined to doing in-calls out of my home. So I did that when my kids were at school. David came home early. And I'll never forget, I couldn't see his face, but I'll never forget the sound of his voice when he was screaming out my name. "Mom, what are you doing with that guy?" And I remember, oh my God, David's home. And I remember jumping up and quickly trying to put on my clothes. And I'll never forget what you said to me. You said to me, "Well, hold up, wait a minute. Do I get my money back? Because I really wasn't done yet." No care that my son just witnessed us having sex. You didn't care about any of that. All you cared about was whether or not you were finished. I got another direct message in my life that nobody cares about prostituted women. But I already knew that. But I went running after David, who had taken off, and he was running through the townhome complex that we lived in, and he was screaming, "I hate you! I hate you!" Finally, I caught up to him and I had to straddle him down. And I'm like, "David, what are you doing? I'm sorry you had to see that. I hate you. You're a whore. David, you don't understand. This is all I know how to do. I'm trying to take care of you." After that, my life with David became really hard. Every time I lied to him, I insulted his intelligence. I lied to him all the time. "David, I'm not doing that anymore. Mommy's got a job now." "Oh yeah, well, what are these condoms doing in your purse, Mom? Who are you talking to on the phone, Mom? Who's that guy, Mom?" Everything. He drove me nuts. Every time I lied to him, our trust in our relationship was bad. And eventually he ended up going to live with his father, who had turned his life around. And then I had Devin. Devin's father was dead, and so I didn't really have anybody to help me with Devin. Devin, I always called him my ride or die baby. He probably saw the most out of all my kids, maybe went through the most. He was my kid that never complained. You know, David was my son that if he even thought that the money that I bought that new PlayStation with for Christmas, if he even thought that money came from prostitution, he didn't want it. Devin was a little bit different. I decided to do things different with Devin. I said to myself, you know, maybe I should just normalize it for him. Maybe if I normalize it, it won't hurt him so much. David had all this shame and anger and resentment. You know, he was embarrassed of his mother. So how can I make things better for Devin? So after David moved in with his dad, I remember telling Devin, you know, son, here's the thing. You're going to hear a lot of bad things about your mom. People are going to call me names. They're going to say I'm a hoe. They're going to call me a prostitute. But son, all I want you to know and all I want you to worry about is, did I take care of you? Did I buy you and get you all the things that you needed and wanted in your childhood and that you needed to succeed in life? And Devin was my son, though, that kept everything inside. He never complained about anything. He was also my son that the school called me every single day. Your son's been in another fight. What for this time? Well, Mom, I was trying to defend you. They were calling you names. They were calling you a hoe. Devin, what did I tell you about that? Don't worry about that. Devin is also my child that I used to say, Devin, I got this guy coming over I want you to go upstairs with your friends, sometimes with his friends, and I'm going to get this guy in and out of here real quick. And when I'm done, I'm going to buy you that new video game that you want. You know, I found out later that Devin used to be able to hear us. I found out later that Devin often sat in his bedroom window watching the different men walk back to their car. I don't know what he was thinking or feeling. He never shared that with me. I don't know how that's impacted his life, but I'm sure that it doesn't feel good. My son Dylan, I ended up giving him to my brother when he was just a baby. And I have another daughter, Destiny, who I lost to the foster care system when I was pregnant with her because of my crack cocaine addiction. You know, I named her Destiny because I always knew when I had a little girl that that would be the child that would change my destiny. And she did. I lost Destiny to the system because I hated myself so much from being in prostitution. I had so much self-hatred, and I felt so completely convinced to the core of my being that there was no way out. There was no way out of prostitution. I let the system convince me that she was better off if I signed my rights over to the foster family. They took her away from me because I couldn't stop using drugs the whole time I was pregnant. You know, a lot of times when I was in the life, people asked me, "Don't you love your kids?" Yes, I love my kids. I loved my kids a lot. I made a lot of decisions because I loved my kids. I thought I was doing a loving thing when I signed Destiny over. And it was the biggest mistake I ever made in my whole entire life. Destiny spent 10 years in a very abusive foster home where she was physically and sexually abused. That's when I started my story, my situation with Destiny was a little bit different. It was unique because for most people, when they lose their rights with their children and their children's go into the system, they don't get to see them anymore. But by me doing a transfer of legal custody, I did it because I believed that the foster parent, when she told me that she would always let me have a relationship with Destiny. And so once that legal transfer of legal custody was signed, those visitations stopped, and she didn't let me see Destiny, and I didn't think I had any rights. And because I was in prostitution, I didn't think that the courts would listen to me or believe me. And I didn't think I had a chance in court. When have the courts ever done anything for me? But I found out I did have rights. And even though I was trapped in my life, even though I believed that there was no way out, I was going to get my visitation with my daughter. And somehow, I don't know how I did it, but I jumped through a lot of hoops in family court, and I won visitation with my daughter. And no matter what was going on in my life, Friday night when I picked up my daughter, it stopped. I picked it up again on Sunday when I dropped her off. But I never missed a visit in 10 years. And I can't tell you how hard it is to drop your daughter off every Sunday where you know she's being hurt and there's nothing you can do about it. And I didn't believe I could get out of prostitution either. finally, I had a PO. I think I had caught another DWI. And my PO, she had had it with me. You know, I remember her sitting across from me and saying, "What can I do for you, Jenny? What is it going to take? You've been to treatment 13 times. I've tried this, I've tried that. What is it going to take?" And I remember breaking down and saying, "Tell me how to get out of prostitution. Tell me that." And I remember her saying to me, "Hey, I might have a program that can help you." And she says, "I tell you what, why don't we just start with a small goal? What is it that you need?" "Well, I need a driver's license because not having a driver's license is keeping me with abusive men because I can't drive. And I got to be able to drive to get on my calls. I got to do calls in order to pay my rent. I got to be able to have money in order to take care of my kids. I can't get a job because I got a 6th grade education. I've never had a job in my whole entire life. I don't have any work skills. I don't know what else to do." And she said, "Well, I tell you what, if you go to Breaking Free and you get these cards signed, I will count that as AA groups, and we will work towards getting your driver's license." And I said, "Okay." And I remember coming to Breaking Free, where I finally felt understood. I finally, I felt nobody was judging me. I felt a lot of judgment in prostitution from everyone around me. The whole world, I felt, judged me. And I was finally able to start talking about prostitution and really understanding that it's a form of slavery, that it's paid rape and violence against women. But what would I do about it? How do you get out? And Breaking Free offered me an internship, and eventually I ended up becoming an advocate, and now I've been working there for 7 years. Destiny's also been living with me now for 1 year. And prostitution is still affecting my life today, even though I've been out for 7 years. Destiny is 12 now. And the thought of her being 12 and she has a lot of issues from everything that she's been through. I get that there's a lot of reasons that men see women and in prostitution. And I am not judging you. I know what it feels like to be judged. Nobody can break free when there's judgment. It only condemns us and keeps us trapped. So I do want you to know that I'm really happy that you're here. And I'm proud of you for being here. And I'm not judging you. A lot of reasons that men get involved with women in prostitution, loneliness being one of the main reasons. Maybe you're socially awkward and you don't know how to approach women. Maybe you have a fantasy that you're not going to ask your wife to do. Maybe there's a health issue, with your wife, and you guys don't have intimacy. Whatever your reason is, I'm really hoping that after today, And after everything that you're going to be learning and thinking about, that you'll have a new understanding that you're no longer going to buy into this. That nobody should be bought or sold. And your sexuality is just as important as ours. You know, you are just as important. Prostitution impacts you as well. I'm sure there's times you've been with women in prostitution and asked yourself, why did I just do that? You walk away feeling just as empty. There's no fulfillment in this. Everything that you're buying into is a lie. It's a lie what the women are buying into when they get involved, and it's a lie what you're buying into when you get involved. For me, getting out here and helping other people who were broken just like me, that's what's helped heal me. I don't know what the solution is for you, but I do hope to see that you get more involved in our Men's Breaking Free program and see that I want to see you be a part of the solution moving forward. Thank you for listening.